The following program is a production of Pioneer Public Television.
Hello and welcome to Compass. This week, a look at what many employers in western Minnesota say is their biggest problem, finding workers. Why is this a problem, and how can employers and potential workers and community groups come together to find a solution? With us to sort it out, we have two guests. Cameron Macht is the Regional Analysis and Outreach Manager for the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development, also known as DEED. He's based in Willmar. And Carrie Bendix is Executive Director, I should say, of the Southwest Private Industry Council. That's a nonprofit organization that focuses on workforce development. So Carrie and Cameron, thanks for joining us on Compass.
Thank you.
So there is this question of workers and workforce, and Cameron, I know you study this a great deal. So where are we at right now in southwestern Minnesota in terms of understanding what employers need and what the workforce is?
Yeah, there's been some challenges recently. Employers have been reaching out to us saying that they're having a hard time finding qualified applicants for the jobs that they have available. And a lot of the data that we're looking at shows that the labor force is definitely tighter. In fact, the most recent statistics show that there are fewer job seekers than there are job vacancies. And so, that creates certainly a challenging situation on both sides. We want to make sure that the people who are available have the skills that are needed to fill those jobs, and then also that the employers are able to tap into new labor force categories to try and fill those jobs.
And when you say vacancies, I mean, we're talking about everything from highly skilled jobs to what we think of as skills that maybe don't as much training to skilled jobs that may not require much training at all, right? It's the whole spectrum?
Sure, yeah. It covers the entire waterfront. It's retail salespeople and cashiers and home health aides to highly skilled vacancies like engineers, doctors, physical therapists, all kinds of different openings.
And Carrie, I can see you nodding because you're working with workforce centers and people every day who are looking for work. What do you see?
I see the same. Every time we meet with an employer desperate for employees, a lot of times the employers or the businesses can't grow because they don't have the workers that they need to get the jobs done. There was one manufacturer that we talked with who wasn't taking any new additional work because they couldn't keep up with the work that they had. So it's not only a worker issue, it's an economic development issue, not having enough workers to meet the needs of employers.
Sure, because everybody wants to see a local employer expand.
Yes.
But if they can't find enough workers, and so what kind of skills do they need? Because it's everything from soft skills to highly skilled.
Yes. So employers are looking for soft skills. They're looking for people who are good team workers and who can show up on time and do a good job and be present, as well as decision making and integrity and all of the soft skills that make someone a good employee. But they're also looking for those technical skills that are required to do a good job. And that's where sometimes in our organization we provide training opportunities to gain additional credentials that teach them the technical skills that lead to higher wages for individuals.
So let's talk about some specific skills as an example, because we may have high-tech jobs that are relatively new, but also some very traditional jobs. And before we started the recording, I know, for example, that the topic of plumbers came up. Really good examples. So, Carrie?
Yeah, so there is a huge need for plumbers and actually many of the trades. And when we were talking earlier, that plumber is making more 4 years after graduation than the chemical engineer with a bachelor's degree. They're very much high in demand, and I think a lot of people are surprised by that. And so there's always been this thought that you need a 4-year degree to be successful and have a successful career, but there's lots of great opportunities for for employees with the technical skills that are in demand. So.
And Cameron, in your studies of the entire region, are you seeing the same sort of issue that, we've got this technical education and we've got traditional and non-traditional sort of jobs in the mix?
Sure, yeah. If you look at the overall mix of jobs in southwest Minnesota or western Minnesota as a whole, usually about 2/3 of the jobs can be started at least with a high school diploma or less. Now, certainly investing in post-secondary education ends up being worthwhile because it leads to higher wages and lower unemployment long term. But there's a tremendous amount of opportunities available for people across the educational spectrum. It's not just a 4-year degree that will lead to a successful career in this region.
So when we talk about 2-year versus 4-year, I know this is an emerging issue that a lot of people have talked about, that there are these opportunities for people with a 2-year degree, because there are people who may go on to a 4-year degree, but that the 2-year degree seems to be a growth area. And Carrie, as you work with people in the workforce, are you seeing a lot of that interest in the 2-year degree from employers?
Oh yeah, well, many of them are, especially in the region that we work with, are looking for people with more of the 2-year entry-level skills that will eventually lead to higher wages and more skills. Many employers are actually paying for additional training and kind of growing their own within their organization for the more skilled workers. So an individual could start off with earning a credential in welding. That's an area that's very much high in demand, and continue to build their skills in the manufacturing industry.
And in your work too, have you also been seeing things at the high school level, for example, where people may not necessarily have caught up with the statistics and the reality of understanding, if someone who's 17 or 18 years old, what the opportunities are?
Yeah, so we've created labor market infographics. And in one of my roles here, I met with about half of the high schools in the area to learn about how they go about providing career counseling services to the high school students, and really learn that sharing the labor market information, the current jobs that are in demand, and the requirements for education and what different occupations pay was a real need. So we developed a Know Before You Go campaign that has labor market infographics in many different industries, from healthcare, manufacturing, information technology, and that's one of the ways it's been really popular. The schools have really enjoyed having that information, and it actually is now available across the state because there is such a need for that information.
So that information, of course, is largely the 18 to 24-year-old group, right?
Oh, we've been sharing it with everyone, everyone we work with, because you may have someone who is a dislocated worker or a person who got laid off from a job through no fault of their own, and they may have worked on the plant floor but want to build their skill base. And so it's another great opportunity for them to kind of reflect and look at the information, what they'd like to do, and see what skills and what jobs are out there for them.
So, and Cameron, in your work, as you look at the research on this, does there seem to be any sort of trends about different ages in the workforce? Because you may very well find people at 50, or you may find people in high schools who need to go back. Are you seeing any trends that we should be aware of there?
Yeah, the workforce in this part of the state definitely tends to skew older. We have a much higher percentage of the population that's in the older age groups, and obviously we're going to need to count on them to stay in the labor force longer if we're going to meet the needs that employers have been sharing with us. And so, yeah, the older generation tends to have a little bit lower educational attainment rate than what you see with some of these younger populations that are coming out, going straight from high school into college. And so there might be a lot of need for additional training, whether it's a short-term post-secondary credential or it's a longer-term change that they're making in their career.
Sure. And are you also finding that people may not necessarily understand how many people in any given year are moving in the workforce? Because traditionally, of course, people would stay with jobs quite a long time. That was our idea. And now nationally, the figures are roughly one in every five positions, or 1 in every 5 people changes over in a year. Is there a lot more sort of turnover, and how are workers reacting to that, or employers?
Yeah, when the economy is strong like it is right now, there's a lot more job mobility, people who are starting to move their way up the career ladder because those positions become available. You see a little bit less job mobility when, like 10 years ago when we were in the Great Recession, people were a lot less likely to leave their job because they weren't sure what else was available, or maybe there was nothing else available at that time. So you definitely see, people moving on for better opportunities, maybe increased wages, more flexible schedules, better benefits, trying to find something closer to home. And it definitely helps when employers are expanding and in need of new workers.
So when workers come in, or potential workers, Carrie, and they come into your office or you start talking to them, where do you start with helping people sort out what kind of opportunities might be available for them? Because it can be fairly daunting.
Sure. Well, first, everyone is their own unique person, and some come in and they know exactly what they want to do, and others may not have a clue, and they're starting fresh, or it's their first job, and they don't have a lot of experience yet. And so we really talk with them. We sit down, and we have career assessments that kind of measure their interest as well as their aptitude, as well as sort of the environment that they want to kind of work in. And so those tools we have available to meet with them. We really encourage looking at labor market information so that they really understand the type of occupation that they're interested in, and if they're going to especially invest in any education, does it make sense? Is there a return on investment that makes sense for them as well? So.
And when you say labor market, in many cases that's the labor market, say within a 20 to 30 mile radius, that may be where a lot of people want to commute, and then beyond that. So does a lot of it tend to be sort of regionally focused on them understanding what's nearby?
We tend to do a bit broader out here in our area. Most people think of a commute in less than an hour is doable. So it's a little bit broader than that. We have employers who contact us, and in our workforce centers or career force locations, we will have events and we'll let all the job seekers know who's there. So there's a variety of things that we do. One of the things too that we're working on is giving high school students and people in a job search mode kind of opportunities to have a work-based learning experience, to go experience that employer. Many of our students think that there's no good jobs here, and we're trying to say there's a lot of great jobs here. Let's help you introduce you to a lot of those great companies that are in our area and the great occupations that they could have.
So what we're talking about may also be called job shadowing.
Yes.
Short-term internships, other
Yes.
kinds of experiences where they actually find out what it's like to be working in that workplace or that profession, right?
Yes. Yep. Or business tours, or we have employers that come in and sit on panels to talk about their work and what they do, and as well as the occupations that are available.
And Cameron, one of the things that you've worked on, which we talked about employers, you've also worked a bit on business retention. And I want to make sure we talk about this because there are some interesting ideas that you've come across about what it is that may allow a community to keep the businesses that they have now. Employment pressures aside. So what are we learning about what it takes to keep businesses in rural Minnesota?
Yeah, business retention and expansion is an extremely important part of economic development. Probably not quite as popular as what you see with like trying to bring businesses in or trying to help with startups, but it's so much easier to help your existing businesses succeed and expand because they already are familiar with your area, they've chosen to locate there. And so we did a research study in partnership with the University of Minnesota. They have a business retention and expansion program, and it's excellent. It's been proven to work well in communities across the state, both in the metro area and in greater Minnesota. And really what they're focusing on is they'll put together a task force. That task force goes out and meets with local businesses, asks them questions about maybe if they're planning on expanding and what the barriers might be, their take on local government services or the quality of local education or what's missing from the community that could be brought in to help them be more successful. And this task force then puts all this information together, and once they have a better understanding of what can we do to actually make our businesses more successful, they put together action plans. And some of it is just the meeting with the businesses shows them that you really appreciate them being located there, but it also helps you identify any major red flags that might be coming up that might push those businesses elsewhere. If it is a lack of workforce, that's one of the things that was identified in one of the case studies we looked at is, so how do we connect the employers with the high schools then to make sure that high schools are aware of the jobs that are available and training and the skills that those employers need.
So as we talk about the training and skills that employers need or what students may want, one of the things we haven't talked yet about is how much. So dollars per hour. A lot of people say, well, what's a good job or what's a good paying job? So there are sort of some benchmarks that we can talk about here about the emerging wages that we can look at, and Carrie, anything that you're seeing that kind of jumps out
I'm
at
actually
you?
going to refer that to Cameron because I'm guessing he has a better idea on.
Yeah, we try to keep track of cost of living in different areas of the state. In fact, DEED has a tool called the Cost of Living tool that looks at basic needs cost of living, so housing, transportation, insurance, childcare, food, that kind of stuff. And what it shows is based on whatever family size that you choose. So if you're a single person living alone or a family with 2 adults and multiple children, there's a lot of different settings that you can put into there. But it'll give you an idea of, well, how much does it actually cost to live in that region? And obviously Southwest Minnesota has a lower cost of living than what you'd see in the Twin Cities metro area. But out here, for a partnered family with a child, the typical cost would be maybe $14 or $15 an hour that they'd need to be earning during their working time. And so certainly there are ways that we can match up cost of living with the wages for occupations that are in demand in Southwest Minnesota. And some jobs certainly are going to fall short of that level. If you're looking to be a cashier or retail salesperson, it's going to be hard to meet that basic needs cost of living. But then there's also a lot of the other opportunities that are available. So salespeople or plumbers or chemical engineers, those are people that would be making more than enough to have a comfortable lifestyle.
Well, and I suppose supply and demand is probably part of what you're seeing, Carrie, because
yes.
because again, if employers are short, there's there are various levers that they can work on. Adjusting hours is one way to be more appealing to employees, but another
Yes.
one obviously has to be how much they pay per hour or what the annual salary is.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Cameron, but I believe that Southwest Minnesota or Western Minnesota has actually had a pay increase, over the course of this last year. We've seen wages go up, and so that's employers responding, I think, to the lack of workers in the region. And I think that will help to draw more workers to the region or keep individuals who are already here in the area. So.
Do you think there's also a bit of a misperception? I mean, you mentioned the misperception among high school students that there are no jobs in the area or no good jobs.
Right.
Is there a misperception as people are sort of midway through their career or later in their career of understanding really what's available near them, do you think, as you work with people who come in?
Yeah, I think so. We have a lot of different tools when they meet with us to help them identify, and I think a lot of the folks are surprised at the opportunities that are here. When we do have a layoff in the area, we have employers contacting us. They might see it in the newspaper that such and such company is laying off so many people. They're contacting us immediately to try and say, well, we have jobs. And we had multiple employers contact us recently for a layoff. And we would help host job fairs and things like that so that those individuals, so there's a huge need. I mean, employers, they just kind of are, hey, they're calling out, we need workers. And so if we could hear them yell, it would be really loud. So it is definitely a lot of opportunities here that people are not aware of, yeah.
And we hear a fair amount about healthcare workers. Is that one of the main areas where you see a demand for workers? And of course, we hear a lot about the silver tsunami and the aging of the population. So is that one of the areas where you most often hear about openings and heavy demand?
Yes, we hear about openings in all industries and pretty much in all occupations. But in our region, manufacturing and healthcare systems hire the most people, and so they have the largest demand.
And so when we talk about manufacturing, we're often talking about light manufacturing, and in many cases, smaller plants, but there may be some larger plants as well if we look at the entire region, correct?
Yes, I think the vast majority of the manufacturers in our region are smaller, meaning is it less than 500 employees to be considered a small manufacturer?
Yeah, that's what the Small Business Administration uses as their cutoff. But in
Yeah.
our region, any employer that's larger than 500 would be huge. The vast, vast majority of businesses are small businesses.
Yeah. So as positions open up, there's opportunities through a workforce center. Obviously, you can find there's studies that you've got access to, information on the labor market. Plus, of course, as Cameron, as you mentioned, a lot of this is available on the web as well, just through the DEED website, correct?
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of online resources that we've tried to create to help people make sense of all of this data, because that can be a challenge, certainly. There's a new website called careerforcemn.com, and that has a tremendous amount of resources. It'll give you the information on the local career force locations that people can go into within the region, and then also regional labor market information, so what occupations are in demand, how much do they pay within the region, what type of education or training would you need to get those jobs, where are those programs available. It's a great resource.
So we've talked a lot about where things are and a little bit about where things have been, and it's always difficult to predict the future, but as you look at the emerging challenges or changes in the workforce, I'd like to know what kind of things you're seeing, because of course, if people are working with young people or people in transition, it's not only what is here now, but what we think could be here a year or 2 or 5 years out. So it's tough to approach. Carrie, how do you do that?
Well, you know, it's very obvious we have a labor shortage now, and as you mentioned, the silver tsunami of the number of people who are retiring. So we're really focusing our energy on working on how to develop our labor force. As far as the types of jobs and occupations, that's one I'm not as much of an expert on, and maybe you can speak to that, Cameron.
Yeah, so DEED does a set of employment projections. We try and say, here's what we believe the labor market is going to look like 10 years from now, what industries are going to be seeing growth, what occupations are going to be seeing growth. We update those every 2 years because obviously things change. There's a lot of things we can't predict. Legislative changes, technology changes. Another recession would certainly have an impact on what we think is going to happen in the future. But we do try and aim people in the correct direction. So healthcare is a great example of an industry that's going to see a lot of growth in this region over the next decade. As the population continues to age, they have more healthcare needs, and they also need to fill in for the jobs that are currently held by the baby boom generation as they start to reach retirement age. So, you know, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity available there. What we've also seen in this region is the workforce is becoming more racially diverse over time. And, you know, so the white population within the region is kind of holding steady. You're seeing a small percentage of growth. Different race groups are seeing much more rapid population growth and labor force growth within this region. And so employers are going to have to react to a much more racially diverse labor force in the future, and also try and tap into some of these untapped areas of potential. So workers with disabilities, we talked a little bit about employees that have a criminal background. That can be a big opportunity for growth. Tapping into those workers that go directly from high school into the labor force rather than going into college. And just making sure that they're lined up with where we expect to see demand moving forward.
So it's that continual readjustment. Because we're also hearing, for example, you know, what is the future of truck drivers, for example, or truck driving because of automated vehicles. And some of these things we don't know.
Right.
But in general, some trends seem to be fairly clear, healthcare being one, information technology being another, right? That's what you're seeing?
And just overall, the worker needing more technical skills. As manufacturers grow, those folks on the floor tend to need more technical skills as employers grow. And so that's an important area that we help folks with, is gaining those technical skills.
Yeah, and some of those skills, some of those more fine skills also, from what I've heard, are heavily in demand in construction. Because of course, you know, with the farm economy, you know, having some challenges, there may be less construction involved there, but the commercial and industrial construction side, are you both seeing a number of, you know, demands there in that sector of the economy?
For sure. Yeah, construction is seeing employment growth in this region, and so there's demand for carpenters, electricians, plumbers, construction laborers, even highway maintenance workers. So there's a wide variety of opportunities in that specific industry in this region.
Yeah, including heavy equipment operators and CDL drivers. You know, there's a huge demand for that. So even though technology may be changing and there, you know, how we transport goods from one part of the country to the other may change over the course of the years. Right now, there's a huge demand, and it's an excellent employment opportunity for many, many people.
Well, and that would fit in with the idea that whatever you have as a job for the next 5 or 10 years, the job may not exist beyond that, because most people are expected now to change careers several times over the course of a lifetime, right? I haven't heard the latest numbers, but isn't that the expectation?
Sure. Oh, go ahead.
I don't know if it's an expectation, but it tends to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, jobs definitely change. It's not that they necessarily get replaced. But like the things that a retail salesperson or a cashier does now are very different than they were 50 years ago. So that's a job that's certainly at risk of automation. Not that it's going to disappear completely, but it's going to change. So really all jobs, whether it's truck driving or retail, is going to require some automation.
In the last minute that we have, places to go for more information. So, Carrie?
Well, you can come to our website and we can help direct you to Southwest Minnesota Private Industry Council, swmnpic.org. And then also the website that Cameron had mentioned earlier.
Yeah, Cameron, then that's, so Southwest Minnesota Private Industry Council, and at DEED?
Yep, so DEED is mn.gov/DEED, and then careerforcemn.com kind of represents both of the organizations that we work for.
Great. Wish we had more time, but we're out of time. So I'd like to thank Carrie Bendix and Cameron Mock. Thanks for joining us on Compass. And that's all the time we have for this week. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Have you missed an episode of Compass? Every episode is available to watch free online at video.pioneer.org or on the PBS Video app. And keep up to date with the latest Compass happenings on our Facebook page. Search Compass on Pioneer on Facebook and hit the like button. Do you have an idea for Compass? Send your suggestions and comments to yourtv@pioneer.org.